Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call the meeting of the Legislative Committee of the City of Middletown to order. It's December 21st, the year 2021. I will start by calling the roll. Mr. Massey, absent. Mr. Burr?
Here.
Mr. Tobin?
Here.
Ms. Ramkissoon?
Present.
And myself. We have 4 out of 5. We have a quorum. Some might call this agenda ambitious. I call it efficient. We have about 9 minutes per item. So if you can be both on point and succinct, we can get through all 9 minutes per item. The first one is the motorcycle resolution. Who would like to present that? Chief, is that yourself?
Good evening. So the resolution in regards to limited use motorcycles, it's to help us with enforcement of the scooters, both electric scooters and gas-powered scooters or small mini motorcycles that we see traveling about the streets, sometimes on the sidewalks, that fall outside of the vehicle and traffic law. So we did some research into other other municipalities that have local law and came up with this draft. So there's a lot of like little groups in the motorcycles and the limited use motorcycles. Like just for an example, there's a Class A motorcycle. It's something that travels between 30 and 40 miles per hour. A Class B is 20 to 30 miles per hour. Class C is 20 miles per hour or less, but then it gets into some of the weight. When you talk about electric bicycles, it talks about the wattage, the size of the bicycle, and the speed. So there's a lot of layers there, but a lot of them don't fall under the vehicle and traffic law. So to help us keep the streets safe and keep these vehicles off the streets, we'd like to propose this limited use motorcycle resolution.
Okay, the problem is clear. The solution seems clear. I'm going to go around the table as committee of the whole. Ms. Ramkissoon.
I have no issues with the chief's recommendation.
Mr. Kleiner.
This is not ATV. We have a separate code pertaining to ATVs and motorcycles. This is specific to bicycle or limited use bikes.
Is your mic on?
No,
Thanks.
now it is.
Mr. Kleiner, any questions or comments?
Yeah, the not more than 40 miles per hour, suppose it could do 42, then it doesn't fall into this class?
Then it would fall into the vehicle and traffic law sections.
Okay. And it says on public property, this definition specifically excludes any public roadways owned or maintained by any of the aforementioned public entities. I'm not sure what that means. We have a definition of public property, but if it's a roadway owned or maintained by City of Middletown or Orange County or something, then that's excluded.
Alex, would you like to comment on that? That is the last line of the definition.
So what was your question, Jerry?
I'm not sure that the definition of public property specifically excludes any public roadway owned or maintained by any of the aforementioned public entities. So any roadway maintained in a city park?
Yes, I believe we wanted to exclude that from just this particular ordinance. That's the way I understood it.
Okay, I wasn't sure of the purpose of that, so.
Because I believe that would then come under the vehicle and traffic law anyway.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Okay, if it's public roadway, okay.
Mayor would like a little further clarification on the public roadway and the distinction with the vehicle traffic law and this resolution.
I'm not following it. That we wanted to exclude that? Specific public roadways owned or maintained by any.
I mean,
want to make sure that they can't.
After that, it says it's unlawful to operate a limited-use motorcycle upon any public or near any public roadway, unless it's registered, so I just wasn't quite sure.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah. Tell you what, let the chief and I look at it, Jerry. I understand your question. I believe there was a purpose in doing that, but let me revisit it with the chief, all right?
Okay, sure. And I'm happy to see impoundment included as one of the penalties. So that's
Alderman Jean-Francois.
Other than the question Alderman Klein raised, I'm pretty much going forward to everything else.
Good. Alderman Burr?
Same as Rampant, Alderman Kassoon, I have no
Thank you.
problems with the chief.
President Rodriguez? Alderman Tobin?
Actually, before Jerry said that, I was looking, when did we get this via email, or is it on the
I think the clerk sent it out on your email.
text with everything else, like in the
Was an
big?
email.
There was a separate email last Tuesday, I believe, with all four proposed resolutions.
Okay, I must have missed it. I like to, okay, I'll look it over, but I like to read through them.
Well, it sounds like it'll be tabled pending clarification of
Right,
public.
right, so I'll look at it.
So you're in luck.
Yeah. What about these scooters, like electric scooters? Would that be like those ones you can rent when you go like Washington DC? Would they be covered?
So yes, this does cover scooters because when you look at the definition, it's 2 to 3 wheeled vehicles.
Oh, okay.
There's a separate section about scooters itself and identifies them less than 100 pounds.
So I think that could be a problem. They go pretty quite fast. I've seen them. They're on the roads.
Yeah, so they would
sidewalks. I mean,
fall under the class A, B, and C,
Right,
depending
okay.
on their speed, what they're capable of doing.
Okay, great. So I agree. That's a great idea.
Alderman Green?
I'm fine going forward with this, and I trust that Corporation Counsel and the chief will work out the minor details and move forward.
So speaking of public roadways, would this include the Heritage Trail when it gets through Middletown? So we would not be able to enforce?
No, I think we can also, the county has their own rules too, which, I don't think that's been finalized.
Okay.
What rules?
But if it were the case, the county would take precedence probably, because it's their land-ish. Is it? Whose land is it?
Ours, but we lease it to them.
I see.
We'll be able to enforce our code.
Okay. All right, well, I'm not going to put it,
Bike's not allowed on the trail now.
right. Okay,
I know
council has some
I know we're over the
clarification.
limit. Let me just say this real quick. The chief and I will look at it, but I believe the distinction was that on a public roadway, this kind of vehicle is allowed, assuming it's properly registered. On public property, whether it's registered or not, it cannot be used. And again, public property, by our definition in this ordinance, excludes the roadway. It cannot be used unless the governmental agency in control of the property permits it. That's the distinction. That's why it's said like that. But we will double check that, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Sorry for the confusion
Anything
on
else you
that.
want to add, chief? No. All right, well, I'm going to table it because it's not quite ready for us to vote. But thank you all for your input. Item number 2, special meetings procedures brought to the table by the council president. Would you care to explain why we're looking at this, Mr. Rodriguez?
It was the city clerk's recommendation also. We don't need the police dropping off special meeting notices anymore. Back when there was horses and carriages and everything, they used to send the police
hitching
to each
posts.
house of the alderman. I think we have email, text message, phone numbers. We have Nixle. We can announce it everywhere. We don't have to go to the record. There's no more record. It says in there to go into the Times Held record. There's no Times Held record in Middletown anymore. And this takes a police officer from going to everybody's house and everything.
So the powers that be deem it anachronistic. Mr. Green, what say you?
Yeah, I agree with Alderwoman Rancosun. It's nice to have a little visit and a chat with our police officers when we need to, but I guess we can find other time for that, so I'm all for it.
Mr. Tobin?
Yeah, I think it's overkill. I mean, if there's an emergency situation, maybe they could be still used, but I doubt, I think with the phones and texts, we can instantly get in touch with them.
I asked Rick, he'll make a phone call to everybody in the morning. The only person I ever called in a special meeting is the mayor if we have an emergency. And we could do a group text and, or an email or a phone call.
Sounds good. Mr. Burr?
Oh, I have no issue with it.
I'm sure you don't. Mr. Jean-Francois?
Yes, quite frankly, I'm kind of glad we don't have to do that anymore, because every time the police shows up at my house, my neighbors are looking at me funny. What'd you do now, Jude? So, yeah, I could do without it.
Okay, we don't have written minutes, so that's good. Mr. Kleiner?
Okay, we changed, our bylaws at the Historical Society to say it didn't have to be by mail, it could also be by email. It obviously made sense, but I'm not sure what the proposal is. I know was marked out in yellow, and in yellow is where it says the council shall appoint the time and place of its meetings, which shall be held regularly at least once in each month. And the mayor, president of the common council, or any 3 aldermen may call special meetings. I want to make sure that part is left in. And the only thing we're changing is how the notice is done.
Correct. That stays in.
Okay, I didn't see anything like what the language would be replacing it, so, but otherwise, I'm good with it.
Okay, so the process stays intact. How we notify is changing. Alderwoman Ramkissoon, any questions, comments, thoughts?
It's fine. It'll just be the Amazon people coming to my house now.
Okay, it could be lonely, but that's okay. Members of the committee, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Motion carries with 4 affirmative votes. Thank you.
I would just suggest, though, that somebody give me an idea of what you want to do to replace it. There should
Okay.
be some notice of some kind, so
We provided a draft, the exact language. I think the goal was for the committee to come up with a recommendation.
Okay. Yeah, we have a
to-
draft.
okay, if there's a draft, just somebody send it to us and we'll take care of it.
All right, we'll make sure that's present before we put it before the council as a whole, whether it's be phone call, text, or group email, whatever. Thank you. Item 3, barbecue on the sidewalk issue. Chief?
If you don't mind, can I go back to the limited use motorcycle real quick?
Yes, you may.
Because it actually is clear now that I look at it.
Okay?
Sorry for the confusion, but Mr. Kleiner, when you speak about the public property definition and say the following line, that definition is into public property, and then when it gets into the first section of law, it's public roadway. So it is 2 separate things. So as Alex said, that's why it's that way, so that we can charge people while they're on the city's properties. So it is clear as written.
Okay, Mr. Kleiner, Mr. Tobin, does that clarify it for you both? Sure, yeah. Okay, then I'll see you back one and raise you. Members of the committee, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Motion carries onto the council by 4 affirmative votes. Thank you. And you're still up for barbecue.
So the barbecue, this is something that we've been dealing with the last couple of summers. We have a lot of new residents that move to the city. They rent apartments, and when the weather gets nice, they decide to set up a barbecue on the public sidewalks, right out along the street. And maybe they're moving from locations that's allowable. We do have parks and other venues for people to utilize for barbecues. So when the officers go to ask the resident to please move on and explain to them that you can't do this, for the most part, they're cooperative, but in case they're not, this is a mechanism that we have to use as teeth, basically, to enforce those violations. I don't think any of us want to have residential barbecues on the sidewalks throughout especially in the downtown area where business is going on. So it's a mechanism of enforcement more than anything else. So.
Okay, I'll go around in opposite direction. Alderwoman Ramkissoon.
Makes sense.
Alderman Kleiner.
I'm good with it.
Alderman Jean-Francois.
Moving forward.
Alderman Burr.
I fell into that category once, but I had barbecue on my front of the store, and they told me that you need to go in front of the planning board, so it's a very good law.
Okay. President Rodriguez?
Good.
Alderman Tobin?
Sounds good.
Alderman Green?
All good.
Okay, members of the committee, all in favor? Any opposed or abstain? Motion carries with 4 affirmative votes. On to the council. Item 4, a long-awaited document, smoking cannabis restricted area update. Chief, Mayor, who's in charge of this? Council.
We went through all the areas that we wanted to cover in terms of prohibitions for smoking and vaping. And I don't know if there's anything specific anybody wants me to address. It covers a lot of areas. We had input from a lot of different people. The mayor, community development, the chief, public works. Yeah, all departments, you're right. Recreation was involved in this. And it basically contains smoking and vaping restrictions, which I think are valid in light of the new cannabis law and is not prohibited by the new cannabis law.
So for those who don't have it or those who might be listening, this includes 57 different locations that have been delineated by the administration. It includes vaping, smoking, tobacco, cannabis, cannabis products, electronic cigarettes, e-cigarettes, etc. Going around the table in, once again, reverse order. Alderman Green.
Thank you. Yeah, I did also watch NICOM's presentation on this right before I believe we received this, so it all goes hand in hand, and I read through the resolution in front of us, and I'm all for it, so thank you very much.
Alderman Tobin.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't see the locations, but in general, what are like public property, where, could you summarize the
Could you,
locations?
could
I
you
don't,
hand
I don't
that
have
over
it
to
in
him?
front of me. There's, you got it.
You want to take a look at that? We'll come back to you?
Sure.
Okay. President Rodriguez.
So what's the penalty? Or if somebody's walking past City Hall and smoking, do they get a violation or?
It's a city code violation.
So we have to post signs, no smoking and vaping
I would, yes, I think that would be a good idea.
on all these locations?
It's,
Do it now. We have no smoking signs right outside of City Hall. We have no smoking signs outside the park. We're gonna change them to no smoking, no vaping. We're working with that lady that comes to the meeting every once in a while, the county, I think it's tobacco, something.
She's here with youth and tobacco.
Youth and Tobacco, and they're working with the Parks Department regarding signage. And I think some of it is outside, like the Paramount Theater or places where groups of kids congregate, I think, it goes into that.
Yeah, and also, just like the barbecue, that when we ask someone not to do it and they tell us, no, I'm gonna do what I want to do.
Yeah,
we
nothing.
have no enforcement action. This gives us an enforcement action. Like, we had a gentleman at the skate park, he was removed from the skate park, and he's like, all right, fine, I'm gonna come over, and he stood on our front steps and smoked marijuana. Like, and we have no enforcement.
signs are fine though, right? Signs are fine. We'll put signs up.
Yeah, we put some, well, I
Take
don't know.
his statement
Signs
or
up on,
beat 'em.
we put them on all public areas, yeah, we're
Okay.
fine with that. And we're, Ray Linda has signs ordered through this organization.
Okay. And the penalties are fines.
It's a tool.
And it's city fine, right? So it doesn't have to go to the DA's office?
No. This is all city code.
All right,
It's one of the reasons why we're doing it.
Yeah, thank God.
Because the DA doesn't prosecute these things.
right.
You good, President Rodriguez?
I'm good, thank you.
Alderman Burr.
Another great thing of, this is what we do to protect our city and our parks. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Jean-Francois.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling. The other day, I was on my way to work, and there was just this car in front of me. It must have been at least 4 teenagers in the car. I mean, and they were smoking in their cars. I was right behind them, and the smell takes over my whole vehicle. I mean, I had a meeting that day. I walk into the meeting, everybody's looking at me funny, like I was smoking weed. I mean, now, I drive around with fresheners in my car just in case that incident happened again. And
I doubt that would hold up in court, frankly, but,
I was going to
Try
say,
that if you want.
I have an air freshener, Your
I
Honor.
could see that's going to be becoming a big issue. But, yeah, definitely I'm all for it.
Remarkable story. Alderman Kleiner.
Yes, I'm in favor of it. I had a question on Section B where it says no smoking or vaping of cigarettes, et cetera. within 50 feet of all entrances, exits, open windows, ventilation systems, and so on, except that this prohibition shall not apply to any of the properties listed in paragraphs 25 to 49 of Section A. And is that because there really aren't any windows or any buildings? that
They're
were-
parking lots.
Right, but I mean, okay, so it's all just the parking lots that it doesn't apply to?
Right, right.
Okay,
Okay?
yeah, that's fine then. Thank you.
Alderwoman Ram Kasoon.
I think it's a great idea. As a parent at Little League who had this guy who kept coming and smoking a cigar right next to the kids on the side of the field and repeatedly, like, you can't smoke down here. And people just don't respect it.
He
So
said, who says so?
it's like, there's kids standing here. Just people lack common sense. So it's just nice that we have something to make sure that, everyone is breathing fresh air. I'm good with it.
Back to Alderman Tobin.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. There's a couple details I was curious about. So it's 25 feet, so it can't be on the sidewalk outside of City Hall. That would be a violation. It have to be 25 feet from the entrance. All right. And then the, as far as like, if someone took us to court, like ACLU or something, would this stand, this would stand up, or would we get sued? Or
We hope so. I mean, anybody can bring a lawsuit, and
Right.
we're in an age where lawsuits are common. We looked at the cannabis law, we looked at our own laws, and I think this will hold up.
Yeah, but it's not only cannabis. They're not
Smoking.
allowed to smoke outside public buildings now.
Right.
Right.
Tobacco.
Tobacco. So we're not just banning cannabis outside those buildings, we're banning
okay.
smoking, vaping, and is there anything else in there?
And I think things like the 25-foot rule, I think will hold up under scrutiny.
I'm just curious if we're opening ourselves up for,
Well,
that's my worry.
It could be, and but I think those things are rational. I think they'll hold up.
Ordinances have held up over years.
It's more like cleaning up language to include things that are new. We're not reinventing the wheel here.
Well, my question is to Alex, but, yeah, I just want to make sure that, we're not,
Yeah, we thought about it.
opening ourselves up. And I do agree. I mean, what's a pain? I'm taking my kids to the park and someone's smoking cigarettes right near the swing set. It's like, come on, can you leave the park to do your smoking? So I agree. It sounds good.
I think Alderwoman Ram Kasoon said it well. When this conversation came up, it was observed by many, well, you can't smoke a cigarette in that place, but we don't have any rules about smoking a cannabis product in that place. And so I think many of these are quality of life, other than the special meetings protocol. They're quality of life, they're giving law enforcement another tool in the box to enforce quality of life. So I think we're on the right track. All in favor of this resolution on the committee?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Okay, 4 affirmative votes, motion carries on to the council. And number 5, code enforcement and, what do you know, quality of life? Chief, council, who's up on that? Council's up on that, as soon as he's done talking.
The code enforcement and quality of life. It's designed to do a couple of things. First of all, as the mayor alluded to before, it's pretty well known that in New York and in many other municipalities around the country that district attorneys' offices are basically getting overwhelmed. And their focus has turned to the serious violent crimes involving a lot of money. We have seen it locally, especially with the new discovery rules in New York. District attorneys are complaining that they simply don't have the staff to prosecute everything that's coming to them. And one of the things that suffers here is what they refer to as minor crimes, but we refer to as important because it's in our city and it's quality of life. And secondly, when crimes aren't, well, there's two things that happen. When crimes aren't prosecuted like that, be they minor violence or property destruction or any of the quality of life things you can imagine, harassment, disorderly conduct, they're not prosecuted, well, you're sending out a message. I can do this. The law says I can't do it, but they're not going to prosecute me, so why can't I do it? And secondly, and this is not quite as important, but it's also relevant, that when the police make arrests and the case is dismissed, well, that's an invitation for somebody to sue. You falsely arrested me. The district attorney dismissed it. And the defense that we normally have when there's a conviction in a case, by whether it's by plea or trial, we don't have that defense because it's been dismissed. So the money that's now spent in defense of these cases, not just by our municipality, but by municipalities all over the country, is becoming tremendous. So the goal here is to avoid those two problems, but also there's a complexity because New York law prohibits a municipality from interfering with the state penal law. We cannot pass legislation here that makes it difficult or obstructs the enforcement of the state penal law. We can't pass legislation here that the state has said, we are regulating, there's no place for you to regulate. Now, that can create a lot of debate on what exactly falls within that, and the courts have struggled with that over the years. I think it's going to become more in the limelight now because of the issues I've mentioned, but a few months ago, the Court of Appeals in a case seemed to indicate that there was a recognition that municipalities need some leeway to enforce their own code, even if it touches upon things that are in the state code. So what I did when I drafted this was to try to key in, expecting a challenge, as has been said by the alderman in the other discussion. This could be subject to a challenge. I'd be surprised, frankly, if somebody doesn't somewhere down the road. And what I tried to do was key in on things that are important to the city, such as city parks, city roadways, city facilities, rather than making it just broadly covering everywhere in the city, private residences. I tried to key in on things that have not been held inappropriate by the courts. I'll give you an example. Years ago, I believe it was New York City or some municipality down there tried to become involved in enforcement of certain narcotics. And the state courts shut it down, saying the state has preempted that. The state is heavily involved in regulating narcotics. Put that up against the case of another few years ago where New York City banned certain kinds of toy guns. You might think, well, that argument, that wouldn't work because the state has preempted weaponry. But the court said, no, the state hasn't preempted that kind of thing, and the city was allowed to do it. So there's a lot of room for argument here. And what I tried to do was to key in on things that are important to the city, like enforcement of these types of acts in our facilities or on our roadways. I tried to make it so that it would give the police the ability to make a decision, to decide whether to issue appearance tickets under the state penal code or the Middletown City Code. Now, obviously, if there's a violent crime where there's serious injuries, the police are not going to issue an appearance ticket under the Middletown City Code. It's going to be prosecuted under the state penal code. But where there's not that type of serious violence, this ordinance will allow the police to make a decision as to whether or not to issue an appearance ticket under the Middletown City Code. These acts that we've listed here, disorderly conduct, harassment, resisting arrest, or obstructing governmental administration, are all geared toward the types of things that we've been talking about tonight. People acting up out of control and not listening to advice by the police or other officials and simply refusing to come under control. And it allows penalties in city court. There's a maximum of 15 days in jail for these offenses, which does allow, I'm not saying that we're intent on putting people in jail, but that prevents somebody from ignoring the mandate of the city court because a warrant could be sent out. If you don't have a jail as a penalty, city judge can't issue a warrant if you don't show up. So if there's no jail time involved and you don't show up, the court can't issue a warrant, so you have a way of ignoring it. And the fines are very similar to the fines we have for other city code offenses. And my suggestion is to try it. This is not the limit of what we can do. The mayor and the chief and I are going to be talking about more situations where our police have difficulty enforcing certain things, and we'll take it as it comes. But this is what we see as the beginning effort to bring some control to this problem.
A quick question, if a resident challenges a citation, where would that challenge be heard?
City court.
City court?
City court. If the police write the appearance for city court. If the police write the appearance for a criminal court, then it'll be heard in criminal court.
Okay,
But the
Mayor
city
has-
court has its jurisdiction. City court make the decision. If it goes up to appeal, it'll go on to the appellate term and then the New York Court of Appeals.
Mayor?
I just want to give you one example of where we're doing this now, is fireworks. If you recall, over the last few
Right.
years,
We outlawed them.
we were issuing several citations, and they were being ACD'd in court. So the next year, we had another 30 violations, and the district attorney's office couldn't handle them. We don't have the time. It's basically a get-out-of-jail-free card. This past year, this council passed a similar type ordinance where we made Alex the prosecutor on those types of tickets. So the police issued the ticket that was, they had to appear in city court. He was doing the prosecution. And I think at last count, Alex, was it 25 guilty pleas or 20?
About 35
30.
convictions and about, I would say, around 20,000 in fines.
Right. So I can guarantee you those 35 people next year will not be doing fireworks. And this is similar. It's another tool. And whether you agree or disagree with the DA's approach, the bail reform laws have created such a problem for them with staffing.
Right.
Not just bail reform, but the discovery laws. And whether you agree with them or disagree with them, the county is not making the investment in the prosecutor's office on either technology or manpower. So they have what they consider to be a valid reason for not prosecuting these low-level things that impact us. So Alex, after that court decision, was it, you said a Court of Appeals, Alex? Yes. The Court of Appeals decision approached me with, we now have the ability to do it on more than just fireworks. And the only concern I would have is making Alex Smith a prosecutor. That's kind of scary.
I'm not sure the committee shares your concern.
Well-
Guilty. Noted.
I'm sure you will if you knew him better.
Mayor, speaking of fireworks, what do you think of the language of makes unreasonable noise in item B
Well, I don't have it in front of me. If you
on
got,
section
give me
213?
the whole document here.
Smith? Who's the arbiter of unreasonable?
Well, we have a noise ordinance. I'm assuming that's what you're referring to, is
Well, for this document, it just says engages in fighting or makes unreasonable noise.
Disorderly conduct?
That's under
I took
disorder.
that out of the state statute
Okay. So unreasonable is still in the eye of the list.
and upheld by the courts.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to go, Chief, did you have something?
With the unreasonable noise, normally it's someone that's yelling and being disorderly, being very, very vocal, causing a disturbance by their actions and their voice and whatever else they may be doing. But I couldn't agree more. I was actually very excited when Alex presented this to us because it does give us the ability to address the things that are important to us here in this community. As the mayor and Alex said, the challenges that we're faced with on a regular basis, this is going to give us some tools to deal with that. Just like with the barbecue, just like the limited use motorcycle.
Yeah, it's a
It
good
helps us
trend here.
address the things that are important to our community here. And just gives us that strength to do that.
In my agenda?
I'm going to go around the table, I'm going to mix it up and start with Alderman Burr.
Oh, it wasn't in there.
President Rodriguez, any thoughts or comments? Thumbs up. Alderman Tobin?
Just, I thought, maybe think of like, this impact like events like happening, I know there's almost like been fights at schools and that haven't risen maybe to the criminal level. But like, I remember the incident we had last year with the people refusing to leave the basketball game. Would that be would this affect like
Yeah.
incidents that happen?
First of all, it's on private property,
it's
but.
apples
but
and oranges?
thi-
All right.
This law has the same type of criminal acts that are prohibited by the state.
Right.
So we're not changing the criminality or the intent or anything like that. We're not creating new offenses that have never been heard of before. We're not doing that.
This wouldn't impact schools then, right? Just curious.
Maybe clarify that. So if if this same behavior goes on at a school or on private property, we could charge that person under the penal law section.
Okay.
This gives us the authority or the ability to charge them locally, keep it here in our city court under city code, allow Alex to prosecute it rather than having the district attorney's office have to deal with what they would consider a low-level crime that has no impact and be something that they would dismiss. But just because it's not on public property, we still have those other tools available to us. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that?
Yeah, I was just curious what impact it would be, or if that would follow into schools. I know we've had some issues with stabbings at schools, or, you know, like
So
football
you-
game fights and that kind of thing.
That would still be dealt with under the penal law. If there's a crime that's committed or a violation that's committed that we could charge, we would charge those under the penal law sections.
Thank you.
Alderman Green?
I'm happy to see a little bit more bite that we'd have into this. It's big on quality of life, even though they may be minor. It's what really affects us here at home. So whatever we can do to give our departments a little more teeth into it, I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Alderwoman Ramkissoon?
Agreed, totally understand about the overwhelmed court system, and there's nothing we can do if we're just turning them right back out with no real consequences, so I'm good.
Alderman Kleiner?
I certainly support the idea. And unfortunately, everything's age 16 years or older, so if you have 15-year-old acting up, I suppose there's not a lot we can do. I also have a question where it says, any hazardous or physically offensive condition by any act which serves no legitimate purpose. Has that definition worked through the courts, Alex? That's one that's standard? Yes. Okay. I just wasn't sure of that. Okay, I'm good.
And the observation on the age stands as stated?
I don't think city court, it was the chief's idea, and I agree with him, because I don't think city court can handle that. It has to go into the juvenile system, into family court, and the district attorneys. It goes into, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it goes into a certain selective part of family court for juvenile prosecutions. The youth part. So, and we don't have that here. So it might as well be charged under the state system.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Alderman Jean-Francois?
Sounds good.
Take it home. All righty. Members of the committee, all in favor of this resolution, say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstain? Motion carries with 4 affirmative votes. All of these resolutions, all 5, are ready to go to council, other than the clarification of the methodology of informing the council of special meetings, and I'm sure that could be done in a timely manner. So I thank you, Mr. Clerk, in advance, and I thank the committee for its cordial indulgence in staying on time and on target. And I need a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Any opposed or abstain? Motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.